Hi, welcome to the IHC Craft Room. I'm Mary. In today's video, I'm excited to show you how I made these two 15-ounce whipped wax soy candles. They're made for Easter because look how cute they are with these little bunnies and these little chicks. Oh my God, they turned out super cute. And the whipped wax came out way better than the last whipped wax candles I made. So super jazzed about that. And I can't wait to see how they burn. So stick around to the end and we'll see how they perform. But first, let me show you how I made them. Grab all your stuff and let's get crafty. This is Mary. Welcome to the IHC Craft Room. For materials, we'll begin with container soy wax, the Village Crafting Candle Bestsellers Fragrance Explore Kit, Stabilo 8 wicks, my friend the Wick Stickums, two 15-ounce Clear LUX jars, and some liquid candle dye in magenta, blue, violet, orange, and yellow, but I didn't use all these colors. For tools, we've got parchment paper towels, two 4-cup glass measuring cups, a kitchen scale, a pot holder, some Easter-themed silicone molds, an egg beater, a temperature gun, some wood stir sticks, wick centering tools, some pipettes, a wick trimmer, some plastic shot glasses, disposable piping bags, a large piping tip, a tall water glass, a spoon, some heat-resistant gloves, some rubber gloves, and last but not least, some toothpicks. Let's start by picking out 4 fragrances from this bestseller kit. I'm looking for fragrances that have some Easter and spring vibes, so I decided to make one candle with citrus and sage, paired with Satsuma orange for a fresh and citrusy scent. For the second candle, I selected 2 classics. I chose lavender and paired it with vanilla. I've actually never mixed 2 fragrance oils together before, so this is a first for me. Bueno, now let's go ahead and start measuring out our wax. If we're talking about measurements, then we're talking candle maker math. Let's go. We've got 2 15-ounce Lux jars, but since we're making whipped wax today, I need to overestimate my wax. And I know that because the last time I made whipped wax candles, one of the top lessons I learned was that I need more wax than normal. I'm targeting a 10% fragrance load, so for each candle, I'm going to need 407 grams of wax. And since I'm using 2 fragrance oils per candle, and I want to use an equal amount of each fragrance oil, I'll need 23 mils of each one, giving us a total of 46 mils of fragrance oil per candle. Now let's weigh out 407 grams of wax twice, and then we'll set it aside so that we can move on to weighing each of the 4 fragrance oils to 23 mils each. You'll notice I'm wearing rubber gloves and I've protected my scale with parchment paper and paper towels, and I have a paper towel handy to help me wipe up any spills. You can skip these precautions, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're as clumsy as I am. Fragrance oil is no joke. Aside from the fact that it is most likely not skin safe beyond tiny quantities, you will smell like whichever fragrance oil you spill for a long time. And so will your table. This parchment paper and paper towel combo has saved me on several occasions, but hey, you do you, boo. They're your hands after all. And once we're done measuring out 23 mils of all 4 fragrances, we'll move on to preparing our jars. I've already washed and dried these jars thoroughly so that there's no dirt or debris hanging around. And I'm gonna wipe the bottom of these wicks on the back of my hand to make sure there's no dirt stuck on them either. These double-sided Wick Stickums are super useful to help secure the wicks down. Or you can use hot glue, but Wick Stickums are hella convenient, so they're my go-to. I'm using 2 Stabilo 8 wicks per candle, and I'm hoping they will each generate enough heat to create a melt pool that spans the whole candle top. So fingers crossed, kids. We'll see how this plays out. And to make sure there are no floating wicks in my world, I'm using my wood stir stick to push the Wick Stickums down hard against the jar. You know, like it owes me money. Give me my money! Okay, we're all prepped and ready to start melting our wax, so let's head over to the microwave. The maker of this wax recommends melting it in 30-second increments, but I am way too impatient for that. So I started by microwaving the wax for a minute, gave it a good stir, and then I did the same thing again for another minute. At that point, I switched to 30-second bursts, stirring in between until the wax was completely melted and hit the recommended temperature of about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm wearing heat-resistant gloves that are a lifesaver, and I got them at 40% off at Michael's, so they were less than $10 and worth every single penny, because this handle gets hella hot, so be careful, friends. Now let's go ahead and mix in our citrus and sage fragrance oil followed by the Satsuma mandarin oil and give that a really good stir. For this candle, I'm shooting for a pale yellow color with bright yellow chicks that have orange feet and beaks. So I'll pour a bit of wax into a shot glass and add 1 drop of orange dye to it. Then I'll add just 1 drop of yellow dye to the rest of the melted wax and give that a good stir. Using my pipette, let's add some orange wax to the silicone molds. I've never successfully used a pipette before this, so yay to me. High fives all around. I love the precision. I can see why people love pipettes so much. While we wait for that orange wax to harden a bit in the silicone molds, I'm going to pour the pale yellow melted wax into the jar until it's just slightly above the halfway point. And then I'll thread that wick centering tool through the wicks and make sure they're nice and straight. Now let's pour a bit more of the pale yellow wax into another shot glass and add another drop of yellow dye to it so that we get a more vibrant yellow. And let's make some bright yellow chicks. Awesome. Now let's leave those to cure and we'll move on to the next candle. I'm going to spare you from watching me melt the wax in the microwave again, and let's get right into mixing in our lavender fragrance oil followed by the vanilla fragrance oil and give that a really good stir. I want this candle to be a light purple color topped with some cute little white bunnies with purple tails. So I'm going to pour some of this wax into 2 shot glasses. The first one will be my white wax, so I won't add any color to it. Then I'll add a drop of dye to the rest of the melted wax so that we get a nice light purple color before I pour a bit of this lavender wax into another shot glass. And then I'll add 1 more drop of purple dye to darken it up a bit for the tail. Let's skip over the part where I filled the wrong parts of the mold. Nothing to see here, folks. And I'll use my new bestie, the pipette, to add some dark purple wax to the actual tails. While we wait for those little tails to harden up a bit, let's pour the light purple wax into the jar, aiming again for just above the halfway point. And let's make sure the wicks are nice and straight by using the wick centering tool. Lovely. Look how straight those wicks are. Beauty. Okay, now let's finish pouring our bunnies with the uncolored wax, and we'll leave these guys to set overnight before we move on to whipping our wax. Well, welcome to the Bloodless Massacre. It's been about 24 hours since I poured these guys, and the carnage is unreal. I somehow managed to salvage 2 of each shape, so let that be a lesson to future Lazy Mary. When you're too lazy to use pillar wax, you devastate the village. For shame, Mary, for shame. All right, let's pull ourselves together and get prepared for the whipped wax portion of this candle. I'm going to get my piping bag set up in this water glass, and then I'll go melt the wax in the microwave until it's just soft. However, I did end up melting it too much and had to wait for it to cool down. But overall, I would say whipping the wax at around 93 to 98 degrees seems to work super well from a consistency perspective. Now let's fill up the piping bag and get to piping. Just like frosting a cupcake, we're adding swirls of whipped wax, filling the air with the soothing scent of lavender and sweet vanilla. You know, instead of chocolate icing, chocolate. I'm glad I melted more wax this time around, but it still isn't enough. I should have targeted at least another couple of ounces of wax per candle so that I wouldn't feel like I'm rationing my whipped wax. Regardless though, the consistency of this whipped wax is much better than my last candle, so I'm super pleased with how these are turning out. Now let's hippity hop these little bunny butts into the whipped wax, and look at that. Super cute, and let's face it, those bunnies look comfy in that poofy wax, am I right? Alright, let's move on to the next candle. I know it's shocking, but we're basically going to be doing the exact same things we just did. Prepare the piping bag, melt the wax, and then whip it when it gets to be around 93 to 95 degrees or so. Then we'll fill the piping bag with the fluffy whipped wax and pipe that wax like a pastry chef decorating a cupcake. Cupcakes again, eh? Seems like a sign, doesn't it? Once we're done piping all of the wax we have left, it'll be time to get these sweet little chicks in place. Voila! My 2 Easter-themed whipped wax candles are ready to party. It's now been about 24 hours since I completed these candles, and they honestly look great. This lavender vanilla candle has a bit of frosting right along the base, but that's pretty much it. No more frosting and no wet spots. I am super pleased. The citrusy yellow candle has zero frosting or wet spots, and the whipped wax tops look great as well. I'm just so pleased with the aesthetic improvement in these candles over my last set of whipped wax candles. Sweet. Now let's trim down these wicks and then we'll light these pretty little ladies up and see how they burn. In my last whipped wax experiment, all my candles failed because tunnels formed in the wax, trapping the melt pool. As the tunnels grew, the pooled wax became so deep that it eventually drowned the flame, and that's exactly what I'm worried about happening again today. Which, FYI, is a valid concern because here we are no more than 5 minutes into the burn test and one of my flames is already out. Well, little chickadees, you are officially a fail. Oh well, I'm gonna pour that wax out of the tunnel and relight the wick. Hopefully this will be the first and last time on this candle. At the 25-minute mark, both candles are still lit, but boy oh boy, are those some big melt pools with large whipped wax walls surrounding them. This does not bode well for the rest of this burn. At the 1 hour mark, both candles are now burning beautifully, but I'm sorry to report that it was not without my intervention. At around the 40-minute mark, one of the flames on the lavender candle was extinguished by the melt pool, which makes this candle a fail as well. What a bummer. But at the 2 hour mark, these candles were both still burning beautifully, and they continued to do that well into the 3 hour mark, so I never had to intervene again.
So what do you think? I mean, you could say this was a fail or this was also a success. In fact, it was equally both in my opinion. It was a success because I learned a lot more about whipped wax. And I eventually did get a full melt pool almost. Like there's just a little bit of wax around the edges of the vessel, which is very good. I did not expect that. I really thought that these were going to tunnel really badly and not be able to burn. But ultimately, I only had to intervene once on each candle. So that makes this a fail because I did have to intervene. The candles should have just burned well on their own if they were successful candles. But the reason I consider this a success is because I only had to intervene once, which is a huge improvement over my last set of whipped wax candles. So I'm really thrilled about that. And I'm also thrilled to see that the Stabilo 8 wicks might actually be very well matched with these 15-ounce vessels. So we're going to see how that goes in a future experiment where I'm doing just straight wax, nothing whipped. And we'll see how they burn. But I'm very encouraged by these results. And ultimately, this was a real success for me. I'm very thrilled. I learned a lot more. They were super cute candles. They burned really nice. They had a great throw. So I'm really interested to see what you think about this in the comments below. If you're interested in learning more about candle making, check out one of these videos. And don't forget to subscribe so that we can continue to get crafty together. Toodaloo!